Honestly, as far as like all the setup in this game, it feels like you get to be a part of a sitcom, and it is so much fun. Have you ever wanted to learn how to make the people around you laugh? And this is the perfect system for you. Hi, my name is Matt, and today we're going to be talking about Flabbergasted, a brand new TTRPG that is based on the high and low society of the 1920s. This game was designed by Fleur and Chelsea of Wanderer's Tome, and recently I had the distinct privilege and pleasure to play this game on stream with Level 1 Geek. So, if you want to check out that stream, or if you want to check out the quick start guide that I will be referencing throughout this video, or if you want to be notified about the Kickstarter, I'll be providing those links down below. Now, let's get started. Well, firstly, I do want to preface that I'll be talking about my experience as a player in this game, just so you know what you can expect when you crack open this guide and get playing about it. First off, we have magnificent art. It's incredible. That was the very first thing. Once I opened it up, I was like, is this a comic? Is this... I mean, it feels like you've stepped into another world. Here you can already see that it's very narrative driven. Narrative driven and rules light. It's very focused on the roleplay part. And I emphasize strongly the play of roleplay, in that if you're super into the combat and stuff, you're not going to find it here. Instead of fighting with blades and bows, swords and daggers, you're fighting with wit and dealing with the demons and monsters that are social graces and status. It's beautiful. Frankly, I will say that if you're super into roleplay, this is the perfect game for you. If you want to get better at roleplay, get better at improv, this is the game for you. Because there's so many key fundamentals that this system bakes into the game so that you end up being able to develop those sorts of muscles, those sorts of skills. If you're a fan of shows like Jeeves and Wooster or Fawlty Towers, this is heavily inspired by those shows. So you get to be Jeeves if you want. You get to be Wooster if you want. You get to be Basil Fawlty if you want. And who doesn't? If you haven't seen those, I highly recommend them. If you follow the page, subscribe to their newsletter, and then back the Kickstarter, you get a free bookmark, which, based on the killer art they've got, why not? But as far as what you need to play, around 4 to 6 players, including the director, which would be the GM of this game, dice. And in this case, they're using a lot of D6s. So your regular standard dice that you would use for board games, 4 to 8 of them. And this is one of my favorite things, is that whenever there's a system that relies on multiple D6s, you get that beautiful fireball-y feeling. Because in D&D, one of the best feelings is when you have just a fistful of D6s and you roll them, and then you get to see it. You get that tactile feeling of hearing the dice clattering around in your hands, seeing them just slam onto the table. Not slam, fall onto the table. Potentially some coins, if you're lucky. I was lucky in the stream. I love the fact that you don't have to worry about historical accuracy. It's inspired by history and cities of that time, but it's not fixated then. So you don't have to really worry so much about, in this case, like prejudice, discrimination. There's enough of that in the world, and I'm just glad, as far as this game is concerned, you can see it in the art. It's very inclusive, it's very diverse, and I appreciate that. Here's something that I really love about this system. It's not about having the strongest or best character, nor a perfectly executed plan, or saying the right thing every time. It's about imperfect characters with flaws, quirks, and embarrassing tendencies. Just winging it. The system itself, it's set up for the process of winging it, with all these characters who are winging it to the best of their abilities. And that's beautiful. I just love when you're able to play up those things that make your character unique and you're not plowing through the obstacle. The great thing here is that oftentimes you might have for your character a plan that seems like it's perfect. But then another character will have a plan that seems like it's perfect. And then, for the sake of comedy, those two plans might end up smashing into each other. In which case, neither plan succeeds, and it just becomes a hilarious kerfuffle, so that we get to continue to, as you can see in the quick start guide, fail forward. Here, we're going to start talking about an improv concept that I really appreciate that's included here is the fact that you keep the action moving. You have setbacks, and the setbacks make things more interesting. The idea here is that success is hard won, but when you do, it's so much more satisfying because you've had to go through so many obstacles on the way. And if you don't succeed, at the very least, you'll have had a great time, and it will have been hilarious along the way. Now, when it comes to the protagonists, I love these characters. From the quick start guide, I don't think you need to have one of each. Let's say you have a party of 4. I don't think you need to have an aristocrat, a help, a well-to-do, and a bohemian. But I think being able to cover each of the bases makes comedy so much easier, because then you have each of these potential strengths and also weaknesses that you can play up. The aristocrat, you've got the wealthy person who wants for nothing, who has people serving them, who will do what they need done. The help, typically the person who's doing what needs to be done for the aristocrat. I ended up playing the help in the stream, which was a blast, because then I was able to channel my inner Jeeves and do my best to help my lady and also play up my own flaws with that. If you watch the stream, you'll be able to see that in all its glory. But the great thing is, of course, you get to see that relationship dynamic. But you also have a well-to-do, people with respectable income working their way up instead of being born into it. And then you have the bohemian, the artist, creative, free-spirited. And with each of these archetypes, you have so much room for each personality to butt heads. Not necessarily like argue, but you get to see how each of them might have little jabs at each other. The sort of friendly jabs. Because when you start the game, all the players are part of the same social club. In which case, you're at the very least acquaintances. You're not necessarily enemies. I mean, you could be enemies who are like frenemies who've agreed to be in the same space together, but at the very least you know each other and you have some level of rapport. When you create your character sheets, nice and simple, easy to follow, and there's so much flavor in this. You choose your archetype, whether it's the help or aristocrat, and then you have your character traits, whichever archetype you choose, you have bonuses in specific skills. Whatever is considered their forte. For the help, I mean, much in the way of Basil Fawlty, your wit and sharp is your highest character trait there. But each of these, of course, determine how likely you are to succeed at doing something that character trait governs. The higher the score, the more d6s you roll. And if you roll a 5 or a 6, you get a success. Depending on how difficult those challenges are, you may need between 1 and 3 successes. Now, I did get a lucky coin in the game, which if you're in a situation where you need, like, let's say 3 successes or something, and your score isn't high enough for that. I mean, let's say you have a 2 in that character trait. Let's say in your creativity and passion, you have a 2, and you need 3 successes. Then that'd be a good time to whip out your lucky coin. Your lucky coin essentially gives you a chance for basically another die, but instead of it being a 33% chance, it's a 50-50. So, in my example, you have 2 in the character trait, you need 3 successes. If you've rolled 2 successes, I mean, that's already pretty lucky, but whip out that lucky coin, see if you can get that last success. So it's not like automatic success by any means, but it's a nice reward for good roleplay or just being funny. This is my favorite thing in this game. It's my favorite thing in most games. Pick your flaw. This is where you will find the most opportunity to play up comedy or to play up something that defines your character and that you get to really lean into. For example, if your character is a ghastly gossip, you can't help yourself and you'll just be talking about every bit of news, which in this game could likely, I mean, all of these flaws will likely create scandal. I'd say gossiping about everyone, including the people in your social club, can create some enemies. And that sort of thing is comedic gold. I mean, I'm picturing just a situation where you're gossiping to just anyone who will listen to you, and then suddenly you gossip to someone who works for the person you're gossiping about. And then you have to deal with that. And that's wonderful. Or if you're jealous, you hate not being the center of attention, resentment towards others' achievements and possessions. In that case, if your plan to achieve your objective, suddenly someone who's begrudgingly agreed to help you, and you see that they're getting some shine, you might take it for yourself and create a problem for you and your squad. But that's the great thing. You're failing forward. You're playing your character, you're playing your flaw, and then you get to deal with the consequences. All of you get to deal with the consequences. And I will say, in the game that I played, in the stream, we created some pretty hefty consequences, which, depending on the character, may affect your character more or less. All in all, I think that if you love roleplay, this is the perfect game for it. It gives you all the tools, all the rules, everything necessary to be able to create really fun, compelling roleplay situation. Those comedic muscles, if you really want to flex those, if you really want to work on those, this is the perfect game. Because with the flaws, with the built-in ideas of failing forward, of finding opportunities for your character to get yourself in bigger and bigger and bigger trouble whilst trying to find your way out, that is grounds for everyone around the table laughing their butts off. As far as this game is concerned, I'm a big fan. If you've got a group who are all willing to play along, to create problems that make sense because of your character, whilst you're actively trying to achieve the objective, you've got the recipe for a great game. So thank you so much, Wanderer's Tome, Fleur and Chelsea, for developing this delightfully fun game. Thank y'all so much for listening to me rave about it. I hope you too will give it a shot. Thank you so much for watching, and take care, y'all.